Should be 2 millimeters in. And if you don't have a pilot bearing installer, you just use a 14 millimeter deep well socket. Fits perfectly. And you're gonna need dual mass flywheel bolts. They're M10 by 1 by 22. And these bolts are M12 triple squares. And this part can't really go wrong. These holes only line up one way, so. Also, you want to put a little bit of Loctite glue on the bolts before you put them in. And just like with taking off the O9G, we're going to lock this in place with the DQ250 clutch tool and a 1/4 inch bar. And then we're going to go with the 25 foot-pounds torque start pattern, then 60, and then finish with 70 foot-pounds. Alright, now that that's on, make sure once they click on your final torque, you go around one more time, just because they might seat a little bit differently. You get slightly off. Already got like a million things running through the firewall here, so it goes through really easy. Just tape it to a coat hanger, slide it through. Coming up from underneath there. Alright, here are my 2 wires, so can high, can low. Run through the firewall. And then, depending on what car you have, where your harness is, but mine's over here and then it runs along the top here. It's connected to another wire here, so I'm going to split it and separate it. So I'm probably just going to pull it out here so I get slack. And then I'm not running all this extra wire from the trans all the way around. So I'm going to pull that down and bring it over here. And I recommend taking the mounting bracket off for the lift. It'll just make it easier going in. You wanted to hit the firewall. And then we're going to kind of load it through the side here. We're going to lift this up, build it up the best we can. Probably going to want to angle the front up and the back down. And then once we get it past the control arm, be able to level it out, slide it in. So this is gonna have to come off. Just stuck a screwdriver through there, and then the bolt in there is a 6 millimeter X. So ahead of time, you know, if you find somewhere else to support the car, and you should just take the subframe out, because this is really causing a lot of problems. And friendly reminder, if you take this off, then tip this over, you're going to get oil everywhere. So, subframe is definitely not going to clear over here. That's flush against the fly, basically. What I'm going to try and do is keep it in this position, slide the jack straight this way towards the front of the car, and then lift up, raise it up, and then try and slide it over. See if we can get it over the subframe here. Alright. Just clearing the control arm. Then we're going to try and slide it over and in without wrecking this. So use the scissor jack, try and swing the motor forward just a little bit, get it a little bit more aligned, and try and not have to drop the subframe. We'll see, still gotta shift it quite a bit. So lots of wiggling, lots of adjustments. The jack on the jack really helped. It slides around together. Finally cleared the subframe by a mile. And there's a little bit of clearance issues up here at the top. Should be pretty close to being in. So put the bracket back in here, connect this, drop the support out. So depending on potentially what motor you have, you might have a different plate there, but it's the intermediate plate here. It's a little bit in the way. I bet they're out of the way, but I'm just going to take a Dremel to that and cut that wedge out really quick and make sure everything clears nice. So when you're putting this knuckle back on, it's got a spring on it, so it has to be compressed. So if you take the electric impact and then put pressure on it and start it, and then finish ratcheting it by hand, but you know, you have a decent amount of pressure to get the bolt started, otherwise it'll just be sitting there forever. So there were 2 of these large coarse thread bolts on the stock motor on the back side, and then the DSG only has 1 hole, so you lose a bolt, which is fine. And then you're going to have to use this DSG bolt, which is fine thread. And so the bolts that came off the back side going into the original 09G that have the coarse thread that are the same length as the DSG bolts work for behind the starter here. So that bolt that goes behind the starter, usually a fine thread, but you're going into your original slot. It was the lines up with the starter rod, and the starter rod was coarse thread. So you stick this in there and use this bolt, and it works perfectly. So hypothetically, this bolt goes here, but it seems like it's too long. This is the size, same size length that came out of the 09G. This is a bolt for the 02E, and this is the fine thread. But it just seems ridiculously long, so I don't know. Might cut it. Seems to want to stop there. Might cut 1/4 inch off it. So now that it's on, you have a couple options. You can just run the standard water cooler, and then just take your stock lines that go to your original trans cooler and then just route them to that. It's super simple. I had already deleted mine and rerouted my water lines for the IS turbo setup, so just gonna run this plate and then run a front mount oil cooler for the transmission. And regardless of what you do, definitely recommend getting some new O-rings. Got the shift link cable in. Just gonna run a loop. I tested it before I set up the whole front mount. So the drain plug is a 14mm hex, and then the plastic fill insert is an 8mm hex. And this plug is the ATF 106. And if you've never used one of these, you're just gonna pressurize the tank and then open the valve. And it's just gonna fill in there. Once it empties, fill it up again, repeat. And lean the canister to the hose side to get the rest of it. Then once you do that, you're going to close the valve, disconnect it, put your drain plug in, and then you're going to want to get it to temperature, get the car level, pull the drain plug after it is, let it drain, and then put the plug back in. You could also start it like this and have the valve open, depressurize the tank, and get it to temperature that way, and then remove it. But because I don't have a lift and I want the car level, I drop it down. There isn't room for all this, so I put the plug back in and then just pull the plug when it's the temp. Right. Now we're going to do the starter. Starter bolts are 16 millimeters. And make sure you don't forget to throw that bolt in there first. Alright, I'm going to put the axles in. And don't forget to order bolts. Typically don't come with the new axles. This is the bolt you're going to need. And I believe there's 12 of them. And trying to do most cost-effective build. This is the axle that's going in. So I'm not positive, but this is really just, it's not threaded and it's just kind of low quality. It basically didn't cut the fucking ends. It slides in from this side, but the other side you basically have to thread it through, even though it's not threaded. But you know, cheap quality. So, but I'm just getting them flush ahead of time, so it'll be easy to mount it. And so I left one out so I can check alignment, and then I'm just gonna put all these in. Stick a screwdriver in here, and then you're going to torque these down to 52 foot-pounds. Put the axle nut on, 52 foot-pounds, plus an additional 90-degree turn. And we have the DSG axle on now. Yay! So the other axle, these just slide in and out like they're supposed to, so that was just shitty cuts on their part. And I should probably paint this. This thing looks probably more like it's a refurbished axle than anything. That's probably why it's so cheap, but alright. Then we're gonna mount this 10 row down here behind the heat exchanger. If you haven't done AN lines before, you can just go ahead and stick the O-ring in there. Then you're gonna push this cap onto the hose, and then you're going to thread this into the end of the hose. So I drilled a couple holes in here to mount this. And this flexes, I can actually get a nut on the back of this, and you can kind of slide a nut in there and hold it in place. Just be mindful that when you're drilling, your AC condenser is right above that, so do not drill through and hit that. And you measure out your line, and you want to tape it up. I like to use this wiring loom, or like hockey stick tape, works really well. And then for cutting it, I found the easiest, cleanest way to cut it is just to use a Dremel, the resin cutting blade. Alright, now we got our lines cut. I'm going to take this end piece. Alright, you want to thread the side out, obviously. I'm going to slip this on and push it all the way through until it gets right to that ridge in there. And then we're going to screw it together. And it should look just like that. And go ahead and screw the end piece into there. Go ahead and grab 2 crescent wrenches and tighten it down. And it should look like that when you're done. And then this bracket down here is on Amazon or AliExpress, 10-20 bucks depending on where you get it. Works great for mounting it. Alright, we're going to do the can high, can low. I ran 16 gauge for all my testing, but running 18 gauge to actually hook it up. Suggest soldering it, but if you don't want to do that, then butt connectors with heat shrink just for extra security. You don't want that coming loose. And just to go over it for the millionth time, this wire here is your can high, and your brown wire here is your can low. When you're pulling the harness out, it's just these clips that lift straight up. When you get to here, you gotta unplug this, and then you're gonna have to separate that from this so that you can pull it down through here. So you really gotta unwind it all the way down to here, just separate it to get the lay flat. Obviously I'm gonna retape all this, but you could potentially go further, but I think I'm gonna leave it here and try and just bind this down and connect it over here. So 27 and 28 are both switch power, and 1 and 3 are both grounds, and then this is your battery power. So you don't need all this coming in here, and you can see that your switch power is really one connection over here. So if you come past it, we're just going to need this for switch power, and then this is your battery, and then 1 and 3 are both grounds. So either one of these browns are going to be your grounds. Pick one of them, and then our braided cables over here, these are your can high and can low. So you're going to need this wire, one of these brown wires over here, and your switch power. So these are the only lines you need. You can cut this here, remove all that, and then wire directly into this.